Welcome to Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig, and today's a fun one. I'm excited. If you know me, you know two things. I like alcohol, and I like hosting events, especially at local places. And I feel like the past few years, we've really noticed all the great local businesses and breweries, especially. Breweries are a big thing right now. There's so many of them, but I don't know if everybody knows that there are local distilleries. And we're here today at Two Rivers with the founder, Mark, to talk about how it came to be, everything, all that fun stuff. So please welcome Mark.
Thanks, Craig. Get that a little bit closer.
Yeah,
Perfect.
there we go.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. So, Two Rivers. It's based off of, we got the name because it's two rivers meeting in Calgary, right?
That's right. Yeah, totally. Clever, isn't it?
Very, very simple. And okay, so why distilling?
That's a good question. It was many factors over many years that got me into distilling. I think it all started probably when I was 8 years old, and not from drinking.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was 8 years old, I discovered my older brother Terry's record collection, and he had this massive record collection with, Styx and the Beatles and Queen and Cheap Trick and all these really, really cool bands. And he allowed me to listen to whatever albums I wanted, which is pretty cool considering I was 8 years old, right?
Yeah.
So from that moment on, I wanted to be a rock star. So that turned into getting into the school band and playing bass in grade 5, and then getting into little local garage bands, and through junior high school and high school, and then as soon as I graduated high school, myself and my buddy, who actually plays drums in Glow with us, we moved to Edmonton and joined a band and started touring full time. So 18-year-old kids, we were 120 pounds soaking wet with hair down to our ass in 1989, and we were going to be big rock stars. Anyways, after about a year doing that, I realized that we probably weren't going to be big rock stars, and that I should probably
Have a backup plan?
Well, probably get a life, right? So I quit and went home and enrolled in university. And I found out pretty quickly in university that, you're pretty poor and you're pretty broke. And I didn't like that very much. And, you didn't have a lot of money to go out and party and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, why don't I just make my own booze?
Yeah.
And then we'll do that. So started making wine and in beer and all that kind of stuff at home, and a bunch of us actually started doing it. We started getting really competitive at it, and it was just like, who could make the best wine and who could make the best beer and all that kind of stuff. So that was always just kind of a fun thing on the side, and I still continued playing music, but professionally, but just part-time.
Right.
When I graduated from university, I came down to Calgary for a wedding and met the owner of a company here that called me when I went back home and offered me a job.
Oh.
So we packed up and we moved to Beverly Hills, that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we came to Calgary and started working, and my buddy Jarrett, who I played with in after high school and in high school, was in a really popular cover band here called Curious George. And he said, dude, you got to come check us out. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, sure. So I came and checked him. I'm like, yeah, man, you guys are killer. Like, it's really good. And he goes, our bass player, RJ, his job, sometimes he can't play any gigs. He said, why don't you learn our set list and you can fill in? And I'm like, okay. Started filling in with him. And then I ended up playing in another band for a while. And then Reed from Zucker Baby called me and said, hey, we're reforming Zucker Baby, and just wondering if he'd like to play bass. And I'm just like, hell yeah. Yeah, I would.
Yes,
So
please.
played with Zucker Baby for a while, and then that kind of fizzled out, and Jarrett came back to me and said, "Hey, another buddy of ours, Darren, who sings in Glow, he's like the bitchin' singer in town, the bitchin' frontman, right? Everybody wanted to play with Darren. He goes, hey, Darren's thinking that he might want to get a project going." And I said, okay, well, let's talk to him and see what he says. So we ended up chatting together and forming Glow and playing in Glow. This is ending up to be a really long answer, isn't it?
But I love it. I love it.
It's sorry.
Everyone's like, wait.
I'm just like super
asked about Distilling?
I'll get back to the point. It's a long tale. So
obviously, it's not just like something that you just wake up one day and you're like, yeah.
Well, totally. Well, it kind of was a little bit, but there was other factors. So we were playing in Glow and playing a ton, and then Darren ended up recording a solo side country project and ended up started touring around Canada with that. And he's like, well, guys, I just I don't really have time for Glow. And so we kind of put the band on hold, and I found and I had a young child and then another one that was on the way. So I was like going, I don't really want to stay up till 4:00 in the morning anymore. Anyways, with 2 young kids, it's just like, I'm too old for that shit. So we kind of put the band on hold, but I found that after a couple of years, I was just missing that creative outlet so much. Like there was a huge hole, and I was super bitchy, and like I was just, this is not cool. So I started making alcohol at home again and all that, and then I was just like, I made a batch of beer, and I was like, this tastes like shit. Like, and I'm pretty cheap, and I didn't want to pour it down the drain. Yeah. So I went out and bought a pressure cooker and some copper hose for like a fridge. Yeah. And made a little stovetop still, and distilled off the beer, and it wasn't that great, but then I was kind of hooked on it. Yeah. And I was just like, okay, well, then I started really looking into it and researching distilling, and what's good and what's bad, and am I going to make somebody go blind, and all that kind of stuff, right? That's mostly an old wives' tale, but yeah, if you drink the methanol right off the start, then yeah, that's very bad. But you
don't want to do that.
You definitely don't want to do that. Yeah. So anyways, so that turned into a pretty heavy hobby. There was hundreds of friggin' mason jars in our garage. And all my buddies loved coming over to the house, and they're like, this is pretty good. You ever think of doing this for a career? And I was at a stage in my career where it wasn't thrilling me anymore. I don't know, midlife crisis maybe. Yeah. Maybe a little bit, but I probably could have retired in another 5 years if I had stayed there. But yeah, I looked at it and I said, I wonder. And then I started seriously looking into what the cost would be to open up a distillery. And then of course I wanted to make sure that I just didn't show up and start doing it. So then I looked into where I could get certified from and training like that. Ended up signing up through the International Brewers and Distillers out of the UK. So signed up for their diploma course. Just to make sure that I wasn't going to kill somebody, right? Yes. You don't have to in Alberta. That's a scary thing.
That is alarming.
It's super scary. So it's super scary. So yeah, but I did. And then looked into the cost of opening a distillery and found out pretty quick that there's no chance that we would be able to afford it on our own. Right. So drew up a business plan, talked to a couple buddies, and they were like, we're in. And I'm just like, oh shit. That looks like, So after I had 5 people that were like, yeah, we're in, then I kind of went to my wife and said, so, thinking about opening a distillery. And she just started laughing. Yeah, whatever. And I go, well, read my business plan. And she goes, oh, no.
Oh, no, you're not just thinking, this is not a 5-minute thought.
Yeah. She's like, uh-oh. And I'm like, yeah, I think we can do it. So, yeah. So we ended up, that was, from that moment until we opened was about 3 years to get everything because there's a lot involved in opening a distillery. There's a lot of different layers of government and just the equipment itself is there's not many places that make distilling equipment,
Right.
and there's not many places that make good distilling equipment. So if you're going to spend $500,000 on some equipment, you better do your research, right? So I actually ended up flying out to the manufacturer that made our distilling equipment, just to talk to them and see their operation and all that kind of stuff before we dropped the cash into it. And but once we gave the deposit, there's no turning back, right?
Well, and how long does it, like, because, I know brewery stuff, and I know, like, beers can be done in, like, 12 days, like a beer. Just like your simple vodka, your simple gin, how long does that take to make?
Well, for our vodka, it takes a little bit longer than some other distilleries, just because I don't have a massive rectifying column. I've got a small column, so I need to run it through my still 4 times.
Oh, wow.
To get it up to what's called a neutral grain spirit, an NGS. That's 95%. So some of the distilleries that have, you look and they've got the big 24 column rectifying columns or plate rectifying columns. Then those ones they can run it through in one time and get it. So for me to get the 95% alcohol takes probably a couple weeks to do that, but then you have to ferment it before. But it ferments pretty quick for vodka. Like, it ferments only maybe 3 days or so. Most of the alcohol's made in the first 2 days, so anything after that's more flavor. If you're distilling it through your still 4 times, there's not going to be a lot of flavor left in it. You don't want any off flavors, obviously, right? So let's say you did do your ferment and then you smelt maybe a little bit of diacetyl or something that smelled a little bit off. Then you let it ferment out a little bit further and let the yeast clean it up. But even those, when you run it through the still, there's not going to be a lot left after that many times. So what I do for that is I'll make a ton of that, like usually a few hundred liters. And then that's what I just pull off when I make everything else.
Oh, okay.
So when I make gin, I'll pull out of that and then make gin out of that. And then if I do any of the flavored vodkas, I just pull out of that. So that's kind of where all the work is getting that base of spirit. And then after that, it's pretty quick. Relatively quick. Yeah. Like a gin distilling day is usually around 18 to 20 hours for the distilling time for that. And same with the last run on the vodka. The last run on the vodka would be 16 hours or whatever that the still will run for. So those are long days, but it's not hard work. It's just it basically, once you get the still balanced, that's so that the alcohol's coming out at the correct speed. Once you get it up to heat and get it balanced, it's usually a couple hours. Then it's more just coming and checking on it every 20-30 minutes just to make sure that nothing weird's happening. And then you just kind of go do paperwork, pay your taxes.
Do all the stuff you need to do. Well, so it's so funny as you're talking and people going, like, I'm sure some listeners are like, wait, I thought he said like something creative, and this sounds really technical. And there is a lot of, like, you want it to be proper, good quality, so there's a lot of technical stuff to it, but there's so much creativity. So, like, currently, I'm drinking a drink made with your jalapeno vodka.
The GG.
The GG.
Yeah.
And it's delicious.
Yeah.
It's got that nice kick to it. And I've had a few of your different flavors. And that's where the creativity comes in alcohol. Like, because you could just make a vodka, just a plain one that everybody else is doing too. But you want something kind of nicer about that vodka. And then you want to bring in those flavored ones, especially. So one of the things I love here, and I came with my sister, Amy. Shout out to Amy. She was really excited when she discovered you guys have a Caesar flight. And it's such a cool thing to get these little Caesars and try these different flavors in it, because everybody's had a Caesar. We're in freaking Calgary.
Yeah, totally.
But to try something else alcohol-wise in it is really neat.
Yeah, the flights were, well, I'm not going to take 100% credit on that. That's definitely ripping off breweries, right?
Yeah,
Right. You
yeah.
go for a beer flight. Now, we do spirit flights as well here, but you go into a distillery and you go, oh, I'll get a flight, and it's 4 glasses of half an ounce, and it's straight spirits.
Yeah.
So most people are going to be like, man, that's like, whew, that's strong.
Yeah.
Right. And you're kind of, if you're not an aficionado, you're going to be going, well, it's just going to burn from the ethanol, right? So you can't really
How many people would you
appreciate
say
it.
would say? Well, how many people would you say would probably not, who couldn't appreciate, would just come in and just think to shoot it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so there's, I mean, and there's only, again, it's half ounce, but you're still shooting.
Yeah. Well, or they don't like it
Right.
because they can't. When you're not used to tasting a spirit, your mind rebels against the ethanol burn.
Yeah.
Right. It's like when you do a shot of something that's high testing, you're like, right? You're like, no, this is no good.
It's no good.
So it's hard to see past that. And most of the times people, they'll take way too big of a sip or whatever, so all they get is the ethanol.
Right.
So actually a friend of mine, Sandra, she said, why don't you do cocktail flights with your little cocktails, and just have do a short, so basically half of what you're having,
Yeah.
and then offer 4 of those. And I was like, I like the idea, but I thought in practice it would just suck. Like,
Yeah.
it would be terrible. It would take forever to make them and all that. So kind of worked through that and said, yeah, it takes a little bit longer, but then somebody's got this whole plate of cocktails and they're not going to bug you for 45 minutes. So, it's short-term pain for long-term
Yeah.
gain. And that's the best way to taste the spirits, because you're tasting them the way they're supposed to be tasted, right? Like gin, it's funny. People will taste the gin and go, oh, wow, blah, 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 blah. That's really, it's super botanically, or it's really hot. And I'm like, well, gin's not made to drink straight. Right? Whiskey's made to drink straight or mixed, but gin most definitely is not. Gin is a base for a cocktail or a martini. So if you're drinking gin straight, cool, but you're probably not going to enjoy it the way that you really would unless it was mixed in the proper cocktail or martini,
Yeah.
right? So I always say that we've got kind of 4 of our base gins that we do, and each one of them covers a different base, right? The London Dry Gin is your typical 12 botanical, herbaceous, and spicy London Dry style. And then we have the hibiscus that's quite floral, and I call it a wet gin, but it's not wet, like sweet.
Right.
It's sweeter than the London Dry, but that's more from the hibiscus tea sort of thing that we make to mix with it. And then the rhubarb gin, which is quite tart and quite bitter. So you've got those 3 bases covered. And then on home plate, we've got the beetroot gin that's like super ultra earthy.
Yeah.
That's my favorite one. It's so good. But each one of those gins, you need to mix it with something different to bring out the full flavor from it, right? Like the London Dry Gin is fantastic with tonic, just a gin and tonic. But the hibiscus gin, the tonic doesn't work great with it. Soda water works way better, or ginger beer or ginger ale. Like ginger ale with that is just killer.
Yeah.
It's a lazy bartender drink. It's so good. We drink tons of them. and then with the rhubarb, because it's quite bitter and quite tart, that one mixes much better with like an orange juice or something. Ginger beers are great with that one as well. And then the beetroot, that one just soda and lime. It's killer, right? So there's just, as far as now, I guess getting back to the Caesar flight. Man, my answers are really long. Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry,
That's
dude.
okay. It's all good.
I'm totally rambling.
It works.
You
It
got
works.
You got me started, and I've only had a couple sips of the whiskey.
Yeah.
So the Caesar flight came out of the cocktail flight because
Yeah.
we've got so many different kinds of vodkas that and then there's always some small batch shit that I've got doing in the back that I got the idea for something. And one of them was bacon vodka.
Yes.
So
It works really well in a Caesar.
It's really good, but that one's a tough one to make. That one took a while to figure out how to best make it. And then, the dill pickle is great. The jalapeno is great. The coffee vodka is really good. You've had a coffee vodka Caesar? Yeah, it's killer, right?
I wouldn't expect that.
No. The beetroot gin's actually really good in a Caesar too. It's really earthy. So then we figured, well, if we're doing a cocktail flights, might as well do Caesar flights too, and then do gin and tonic flights as well. So we do 3 different kinds of flights.
So just listening to you talk there and saying which works better for the gins, like what mix and everything, what I love about distilleries and breweries and Calgary's winery that we got, like the cideries, these aren't places that you're coming in to get shit-faced.
Yeah.
You're coming in to appreciate, and that's what I really like about all these places. And listening to you talk about it and explain, like, people can come in here and get a good buzz going for sure, but they're learning stuff and learning, like, because I did not like gin until I tried local stuff.
Yep.
Because the only gin I ever had was usually, like, my one friend, she loved it. Like, when we were going to college, she loved gin, but, like, pretty cheap-ass stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, anytime I ever smelt it or tried it, I was like, oh, God, I don't understand how people can like gin. Like, this is gross.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, wait, there's different
Yeah.
and proper quality? Like,
Yeah.
And we can mix with different things? Like,
yeah, gin's super versatile. And the beauty of gin, especially for a micro distillery like me, is there's a few rules to it. Like the London Dry Gin has a few rules. Your base spirit can't be lower than 95% because they don't want any flavor coming from the spirit.
Oh.
You can't proof it below 38.5, right? You can't add any sugar to it. And that's, and it has to be juniper forward.
Yeah.
All gins have to be juniper forward, but that's really it. That's the only rules for it. So, sky's the limit. You could put cow shit in it, and if it tastes good, right? As long as it's junior, as long as
the
it
Alberta
has
one.
those, it has it, yeah, exactly. As long as it has those other 4 things on it, it's still a gin.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of it, and that's why myself personally, I love gin, and I love going to the other distillers to see what they're coming up with,
Yeah.
and because gin's a very, very personal product for the distiller, because that's kind of usually the style that they like.
Yeah.
Right? So, if it's a citrus forward gin, then that distiller probably likes citrus forward gins,
Yeah.
right? So
I love talking to all the distillers and brewers and everybody because they all make something at some point that they're like, oh, this is for me.
Mhm.
I know that this is not going to move as fast as anything else we do, but this is for me. And I'm like, hey, it's your business. You got to do something for yourself.
Yeah, that was the beetroot gin and the absinthe.
Yeah.
I knew absinthe would not be a huge seller, but there's my favorite martini is a Corpse Reviver.
Yep.
So I was just like, I want to do my own absinthe for it. So yeah.
Yeah, because I've done the Corpse Reviver here. I've had at least 2 drinks here that have the absinthe in it.
Nice.
And it works. Because I'm always, scared, but it works.
Yeah. Well, it's high alcohol, right?
Yeah.
60%. So yeah, you have to tread lightly.
And so we've covered, or we've talked about your vodkas and your gins. You are working on you're drinking your little whiskey right now.
Yep.
You do some whiskey as well. Now, obviously this is audio and there's no visual, but people would see that it's KY because that's the rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
KY is anything outside of
The United States is EY.
EY.
And Ireland. So those 2 use EY. Everywhere else uses, well, not everywhere else. I don't know everywhere, but yeah, Canada is KY and Scotland.
Yeah.
And I think Canada has always kind of mirrored the Scottish whiskies more than American whiskies. American whiskies are predominantly bourbons, right?
Right.
Corn based, whereas Canadian whiskies are usually barley or rye, right? So we do our whiskeys. Whiskey's another cool category, right?
Yeah.
Right? They're just, it's just like the Wild West. Sky's
Yeah.
the limit. So the first thing when I was designing our still with with the company that made them, as I wanted to have a still that would make a really good Scotch style whiskey. It's my favorite kind of whiskey personally. I love Islay Scotches, like a really heavy peated Scotch. I just love those. Those are my favorite kinds. So I wanted to be able to not replicate those. Obviously, we don't have peated malt in Alberta, but I wanted to make some whiskeys that were the same manufacturing way and kind of the same flavor profile that you would get from just a 2-row barley out of Scotland. So we do all of our whiskeys to the Scottish purity laws. Super, super simple.
Yeah.
Right? You can only use malt, you can use water, and you can use yeast, and then you double batch distill it. So easy peasy. Right? So that's how we do ours. It gets its flavor from the malt. You double batch distill it, so it still saves a lot of that malt flavor that's in the spirit. That gets transferred into the barrel, and then it lets the barrel do its work. Now, a lot of Scottish distilleries will age their whiskey for its whole term in one barrel, usually ex-bourbon barrel. Here we have the luxury of playing around with it. So the first whiskey that I released it spent its whole life in a Woodford Reserve barrel before I bottled it. But the second whiskey that we just released before Christmas, that one spent 2 years in a freshly charred American white oak barrel, and then 1 year in a bourbon barrel, and then 6 months in a Merlot barrel. So the difference between those two whiskeys, exactly same base, 2-row barley. I know I get all my barley out of Strathmore, the exact same barley. That you would never tell that from tasting it because it's so, the second one is so spicy and smoky. And then it has a little bit of nose from the Merlot, and the finish has a little bit of Merlot. A lot more green apple on that one than the first one. The first one's more toffee, maybe a little bit of caramel in it. So whiskey's awesome, man.
Whiskey's cool.
It's so fun.
So you're drinking it neat.
Yep.
Is that the more popular Scottish way of drinking whiskey is neat, or is it on the rocks? Or
I think the Scottish way is just to drink a lot of it.
As someone who is Scottish, I can attest.
Yeah. You know what? There's no, and this is, some people get snobby about drinking whiskey. There's no wrong way to drink it.
Yeah.
Even if somebody wanted to put some Coke in it, I'd probably grit my teeth. But at the end of the day, hey, it's your drink. Do what you want. Personally, myself, this whiskey was proof to 40%. Right. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to have, when we sold it, I wanted to have a whiskey that was accessible to everybody, not just the aficionados.
Yeah.
Right. So the first batch I did all at 40, and then I got in shit from a lot of our regulars because they're like, "You didn't do any cask strength," and I'm just like, "Well." So the next one I did 20 bottles of cask strength. Next one I'll probably do 40 because those cask strength ones get sold instantly. They wanted it. But so let's say you had a dram at cask strength at 65. Well, you're probably not going to drink that whole thing straight,
right?
Because that's a lot of ethanol. That's really, really hot. So it's always what I find I like to do is I like to take my first sip just to see what it tasted like in the barrel and what the flavors are in that. And a lot of times it's hard to wrap your head around the flavors exactly because they're basically alcohol is such a heavy solvent that it liquefies all the flavors,
right?
For lack of a better term. And then if you add a little bit of water or an ice cube to it, what happens is it causes those flavors to come out of suspension, and then you can smell it and taste it a little bit more, right? So as you're adding water to it, you're what's called opening up the flavor. And it allows you to really taste more of it. You get less of the ethanol burn, but you get more of the flavor of the whiskey. So yeah. Usually what I'll do is I'll start with a glass with some whiskey in it, and then I'll add a couple drips or I'll add an ice cube and just let it go with that, or I'll just kill it as is. One or the other.
Whatever.
So but there's no wrong way to do it, really, right? Except for a shooter. I would say a shooter. A shooter is, don't. If you're going to do a shooter of whiskey, do cheap whiskey because you're not going to taste it anyways, right? Do vodka.
Do sourpuss.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. We used to do sour jacks. Remember those
Oh
shots?
yeah.
That was like the glow standby shot. Like that's all we ever used to
I
do in the
can't
band.
remember the last time I haven't even thought about that, but it's just funny because we were chatting. I was chatting with people the other day, and somebody mentioned sourpuss, and I'm like, yeah, let's break the shot. I was like, oh, I remember just like having that Mickey of sourpuss that you just pass around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We used to mix it. Well, the sour jack shot. Remember that one with
Yeah.
Jack Daniels and sourpuss? Yeah, it was funny. The last time we played here a couple weeks ago, and that was our singer's go-to. He loved that. He doesn't really do them that much anymore. But I said, so I've been thinking about trying to make sourpuss, and he started laughing, and I was like, I don't know how I could. I have no idea how you can make that, but I've been thinking about trying to make some so we can do some sour jack shots. It'd be hilarious. So yeah.
Well, you have conquered one of the things that I loved was your Nanaimo bar liqueur.
Yeah.
What's the biggest? I mean, there's obviously a huge difference because we got a liqueur. There's cream in it, like
No, there's no cream
No.
in that. So that one has no dairy whatsoever. I've never used dairy in any of my products just because you'd have to pasteurize it, right? So I'm not. I could, in theory, do it, but it makes me worried.
Yeah.
Right. Just shelf life.
Yeah.
In for a distillery like mine, we don't have massive volume. So you have to be really careful about stuff like that. And then when you're using natural ingredients too, like we use all natural ingredients, you have to kind of watch that because it can go off. Like would it go off and physically hurt somebody? Probably not. But would it go off and taste like shit? Yes,
Yeah.
probably. Right.
And if that's the first time somebody's trying
Totally, then it
your
kills
product, then you're like, oh well,
Two River sucks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, you got to be careful with that. So that one doesn't. No, it has. That one is. I think it gets its creaminess from the coconut.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
coconut vodka that I make. A macerated coconut vodka, and then I proof it down with like a chocolate simple syrup that I make up to in house. So, we try to use as natural ingredients as possible. Like we don't use flavor number 32 or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Right. But
and speaking of which, like one of the things I love about what you do, and I'm so appreciative of any business that is cautious of their environmental impacts. So you're about local, like you're not using anything crazy or outrageous, and that's going to be bad for you. And you also like a few other places, you give your spent grain to feeds, like to farms, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the spent grain goes to cattle ranches. There's a company that comes and picks that up, and
So obviously,
and
as a
sends it
small
out.
business owner and a local business owner, it's important that you want people to support local. But
Yeah.
but why is it important for you?
Well, a couple of reasons, and I don't want to stand on a soapbox and have a messiah complex, but the reality of it is the ingredients in Alberta are world class. So why would you not take advantage of that, right? Like even the water, it's everyone goes, oh, whatever, the water, Bow River water. It's like, well, it's glacial fed,
Yeah.
and we're pretty close to the mountains. Yeah, it goes through farmland, and I'm sure it picks up, runoff and all that kind of stuff. But the water itself is pretty amazing to begin with. It's not like some crazy silted river or something like that. So we've got that, and then we're surrounded by these amazing farmlands, and the 2-row barley that's grown in Alberta is some of the best in the world. There's companies that buy our barley from all over the world for their products. So mine's only 50 kilometers away.
Yeah.
Right. It's killer.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you do that? Yeah. You'd be silly not to do that, to get it in from somewhere else. Now, here's the $20,000 question. Would I still use it if I didn't think it was the best? I think the answer to that would probably be no, to tell you the truth. I probably would source it from somewhere else, but luckily I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, and that's just it. And that would be, it's one of those things I think some places need to figure out when they're like, well, why aren't they getting it from us? Well, because is your product the best? Like, and that's where I also I am a huge supporter of supporting local. I think it's so important. With an asterisk of what you just said, that like, well, no, that's not the best product though. Like, or like I've gone to that place every single time, and I've gotten food poisoning, or
it can suck,
or yeah,
right?
yeah,
Right. That's the bottom line.
This, I'm sorry, this clothing is just like wrecks on me, or like it's just put it in the washing machine once and it's done, even though it says like it's good to go. This alcohol, I just
It's so yeah. I guess you know we were saying, and that's kind of always been my kind of my business plan, right? It's you can usually get somebody to try your product because it's local.
Yeah.
Now, but then it's up to you to make sure that it doesn't suck, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you know, I think we're roughly around 30 to 35% repeat customers here, which I think is great.
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic. Now, you know, I'd love to make that. Well, I don't want it to be 100% because then no new people aren't coming in.
No new people.
But I think that's a really nice mix, and it just shows that people do appreciate it. And they obviously do think it doesn't suck, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
Either that or they're just, you know, I don't know. I mean, maybe they like my smiling face.
Yeah.
I don't know. But so yeah, that's kind of always been the way that I've done it. It's just like you never get that second chance to make a first impression.
Yeah.
That old cliche, right?
Yeah.
So
So I've mentioned my sister Amy. You know, she does printing for you.
Yep.
And it was 2-3 Christmases ago. It was a couple Christmases ago during COVID time, but she saw the vodkas that you did in the flavored ones. So she asked me to come pick them up for her to give to her husband, my brother-in-law Dan, for Christmas, and loved it. And then, of course, she keeps, you know, printing your menus and seeing stuff. And she's like, oh my God. So I was like, well, look, I'm a 15-minute walk from there, and I will gladly come and meet you. And she came down with her husband and the 2 kids, and everybody was like, my sister and brother-in-law were just so happy with the vodkas, and they took stuff to go. I also told them, what is the raspberry iced tea?
Yep.
I love that. And so
Yeah.
I was like, Amy, you need to have it, and it's so good. But that's just it. And everybody you bring down, like, they seem to really enjoy it because it's good stuff. It's delicious. So I'm happy. So this will air just after Lord of the Rings trivia has happened here, but this will be our second event here.
Yeah.
And the events are super cool. It's a great space.
It's a really cool space for events, I think, right? Because we've got the stage.
You got the stage.
So you know, you get to be up on the stage and be above.
Yeah.
So everyone can see what's going on, and it's a good layout. Cozy. It's a cozy little distillery.
Cozy. And I was reading that you wanted kind of that like Britain feel to it.
Yep.
And I definitely get that. Like
Everyone needs a shtick, right?
Yeah.
Right? You're probably too young for this, but when I was young, I used to watch the Flintstones every lunch hour. And there was the one episode where I think it was like the Wayouts. Remember that band?
Yep.
And they're like, everyone needs a gimmick.
Yeah.
Right? So you kind of need a shtick in a small distillery like that. But for me, it was, you know, I wanted to kind of pay homage to the founding of Calgary. That's where the Two Rivers come from, right? The Bow and the Elbow. And it's also a cool name for whiskey.
Yes.
Yeah. And then right up until kind of our cutoff was the end of the First World War. And the reason for that is my grandfather and his brother, my great-grandfather had immigrated from England to Nova Scotia. And then in the early 1800s, he did one of those land things where you could buy like a quarter section or something of land in Saskatchewan. So they all got on a train and went from Nova Scotia to Saskatchewan to get their farmstead, right? So they did their farmstead there. And then when World War I hit, my grandfather enlisted. And his brother at the time lived in Toronto, and he enlisted as well. Mm-hmm. And then they went over, and they actually fought at Vimy Ridge together in the same regiment. My grandfather, obviously, he survived the war, but my great uncle got killed on the first day on Vimy Ridge. So I kind of wanted to pay a bit of a tribute to
Yeah.
them as well, because for me, I was just thinking, man, these kids, they're just kids when they
Yeah.
did it, and they were, they're heeding the call for King and Country, and for me, it gives me a huge sense of pride that they did that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of another reason why I opened Distillery. I said to myself, like, what have you done? What have you done in your life? What have you, what's your legacy going to be? And that's, I think, was the main thing that kind of pushed me over the edge of the cliff,
Yeah.
unfortunately, or fortunately, into opening a distillery. Idiot.
Idiot. What were you
Idiot.
thinking? You fool.
Idiot.
I mean, idiot choice, but I'm pleased with your idiot decision because
Appreciate it.
I like drinking and I love the stuff here. Yeah, it's a great venue. What do you want people to know about the tap room? Like, we want to bring people down. We want people to come to this tap room, not just for live music, my trivia nights, but it's just a cool space.
I think honestly, the best nights is when we don't have an event. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sorry, Craig. Well,
this
I
episode will never air.
Hey, I do the events too.
Yeah.
I play here too. But because those are the intimate nights,
Yeah.
right? So, we're not that busy.
Yeah.
Sorry. I wish we were. But, last Friday, for example, well, it's February as
Yeah.
well. So I didn't schedule anyone to work the bar, so I worked the bar myself. And there was four different tables that came in. Well, I spent most of the night bullshitting with them.
Yeah.
Right? So if that's something that you're kind of into or whatever, well, and if any of them said, "Listen, dude, I want to talk to my friend here," I'd be like, "Okay, see ya."
Yeah.
But
I get that
I think
too.
I think it's cool that on those nights you can come in and it's very intimate.
Yeah.
And we'll usually chat your ear off if you want.
Well,
about
and
some
we're
stuff.
going back to what I said about like coming down and learning and discovering that, oh, there might be a gin out there for you, or there might be a vodka for you, or something about whiskey. Like,
Yeah.
it's it gives you that opportunity. Whereas when you're at a place and it's super freaking busy, like if somebody comes in if somebody's having a birthday party here, or a wedding, like anything like that, it's like, great, I'm glad that you're interested, but I'm a little too busy to.
All hands on deck.
Yeah.
It's funny, every time we're playing in I'm up on stage
Yeah.
for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Then those nights, and those are always the nights where dudes are like, "Hey man, can you give me a tour of the back?" I'm like, yeah, no.
No. Because, okay, I want to also mention, if people are thinking of coming down, you do distillery tours as well, so
Yep.
people can actually come in and see everything and
Yep.
learn about it, which is
Yep.
super cool.
Yeah, and we do a guided tasting with that. So
Nice.
we'll usually spend about half an hour in the back talking about our processes, and then we'll go to the front and kind of taste, the base spirits, and I'll usually throw something
Yeah.
else in there too. So yeah.
Yeah, and then you've also do like a dry January. You did mocktail.
Yeah. Well, we have a zero alcohol gin. So, and I never talked about that.
No.
Jeez, Sorry.
Well, that's because
Sorry.
my listeners know.
Well, me too, to tell you the truth. But the zero alcohol gin, it's not, well, technically it can't be called gin because it can't be proof below 38.5%, right?
Yes.
Right? See, we're learning.
We're learning.
But it is, it's kind of semantics. So it is a zero alcohol gin because it's juniper forward, it's botanical, and it's distilled. So the reason that I created this gin was I had tasted a lot of the other zero alcohol gins,
Yeah.
where they weren't distilling them. They were just kind of soaking the botanicals in it and then kind of mixing it. And quite honestly, it tastes like vomit. Like, it has a really acidic-y finish that tastes like vomit, right? And it's just not good.
No.
And that shit pisses me off because I think that when you have a distillery like this, not only do you need to save your reputation, but you need to save the reputation of the industry in itself.
Yeah.
And if a lot of people go, "Wow, craft is shit," then it doesn't matter what you do. That becomes the reputation.
Yep.
That small batch is garbage. Don't even bother. Don't waste your time, and then it kills everybody. So if I make something and I'm not happy with it, it doesn't go it doesn't go to retail, or it doesn't go on the bar. I'll either 86 it,
Yeah.
or work on it until it's good enough, right? Until they figure that it's good. So, but with the zero alcohol gin, I wanted to create something that you could make cocktails with, and that it would taste like a cocktail, because that's another thing too. Why should the person that's driving, or the person that's pregnant,
Here's
or
your
the
Coke.
person, the person that just doesn't want to drink,
Yeah.
why should they not to be able to partake in a fun night with their friends,
Yeah.
right? So, we do tons of mocktails with the zero alcohol gin, and it looks the same as we would with our regular gin. So
Yeah.
you got to be careful too. The flavor and the flavor is very close. You
Yeah.
just don't have the burn from the ethanol, right? So yeah, that one, it took forever to freaking figure out how to do that, because distilling without alcohol is hard. It doesn't work the same way, I'm afraid.
It's funny. I just hope at the end of this podcast, if there's one thing people take away from it, is that there's creativity and there's hard work and there's that technical side of it that is so important when making any type of alcohol. Otherwise, you'll get some. And I think I remember when I was really young, my dad and uncles were making home brews, like
Nice.
making
Yeah.
their own brews.
Yeah.
And it was a common thing. Like, I still remember where they got it from, because they got it off a TV commercial. I remember this TV commercial because it used to air all the time, of like, buy this, and it's like with 4 easy payments of $29.95. Yes. And they drank it, but none of it was good because they weren't really following any technical sides to it.
I always tell people that they always go, "Oh, do you have a degree in chemistry?" And I'm like, "No, I have a degree in archaeology and history." Like I didn't even take chemistry in university. The last chemistry class I took was grade 12, right? Like the chemistry behind it it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
I always say there's more witchcraft and artistic ability, or more like a chef.
Yeah.
And those are the best distillers, I find. The ones that are just like, they follow the recipe to the letter. The thing about distilling is there's so much art, and it is the art of distilling. Your botanicals, or your base product, or your malt it's never the same each time.
Yeah.
So you need to have that sixth sense about what you should do with it, and what you should not do with it, right? So yeah, if you make an error in distilling, the nice thing about it is you can usually put the spirit back in and distill it through and clean it up. So, it's not like you have to dump it down the drain, which is nice. But yeah, there's a lot more that, and I think that's kind of what ties in with my whole life playing music, is there's that certain feel, right? Like a musician can be technically unbelievable, but just sound absolutely terrible because he just plays staccato the whole time, where you go and see the dude that's, really laid back, and he's just laying it down, and it's just like, whoa, man, that's the best ever.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, there's kind of that, there's definitely a big mix for sure in that. Yeah.
That's fun. I like it. Well, as we start to wrap up here, one thing I always like to ask people, what's something that's awesome?
What's something that's awesome?
Yeah.
I would say the island of Islay in Scotland is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's awesome. I've never been there. I want to be there.
Yeah.
No, what else is awesome? My wife and my kids, they're awesome.
Nice.
They're super awesome. Yeah, reason I do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's nice to have that support network as well that is happy with what you're doing and all that fun stuff.
Well, they might be happy with what I'm doing, but
they're happy when you throw Harry Potter trivia.
well, my wife might actually be happy that I'm here 80 hours a week and not. No. When we do spend time together, it's special.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, so quickly here, 42nd Ave Southeast is where we're at, right?
Yep.
Just
on the
off
corner of Manhattan.
Yeah, just off of McLeod Trail there. And like, there's so many great places in this area. I think that people forget that there's a lot of local businesses, breweries, cideries, distillery, winery.
So yeah, we can walk. Okay, from here right now where
Yeah.
we're sitting, we could walk not even 5 minutes, and we're at Annex and Establishment.
Yep.
Right. Or we could hang a right down at Cal Tire and be at Brody's at Uncommon.
Yeah.
In, maybe 6 minutes
Yeah.
there. And then, okay, we'll feel like a glass of wine, go around the corner, go see Chris
Yeah.
at City and Country. That's probably about 10 minutes from here.
Probably
Because you
about
can't, as a crow flies,
Yeah.
it would be probably 5 minutes, but
Yeah.
you'd have to go through somebody's warehouse.
Yeah. Go across
And-
the train track. And that's nuts.
exactly. And then if you turn around the corner from there, you go down. There's Bourne Brewing and Cabin and Ross at Confluence
Yeah.
Distilling and down the street is Banda Peak.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's awesome.
I recommend all these places all the time to people, especially like I love all types of alcohol, but everybody knows that people who aren't beer fans or you need a beer break. So that's why it's nice to have these little other places and check it out. And I mean, you guys have beers here as well. So like people come in, if you have that person who's a diehard, not a
Yep.
liquor person.
That's why we have it. We've got it for the dude that's like, I ain't drinking none of them cocktails.
Yeah.
Oh, I got a PBR for you, buddy.
Here you go.
There you go.
No, it's a great spot. It's easy to get to, and I love this tap room. I think it's so cool in here, and it is cozy. And it feels nice in here.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of thought put into it.
Well,
so I appreciate
it works out. So, I mean, if you don't come until I'm hosting an event here, that's cool. But come anytime. It's such a cool thing. Anything else you want people to know about Two Rivers?
What are we going to do for trivia in March?
Oh, yeah. Good question.
Because the next one's Lord of the Rings. That
Yes,
one's going to be
Lord of
awesome.
the Rings.
Maybe we should ask people what they want.
Yeah, we should put it out there because Lord of the Rings was a request people were having from me, and
it's sold.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few tickets left, I think.
I think there's just a couple, and then of course, I've had some people reach out about. I haven't done Star Wars in a very long time,
Ooh.
and Marvel as well.
Okay.
Both of those have so much to work with there. So yeah, we'll put it out to people, see what's up.
Now, Star Wars episode 4, 5, and 6, or are you going to put 1, 2, and 3 in there?
I'd probably do
1 through 6.
1 through 6.
Because I got to be honest with you, I've only watched the new ones once.
Yeah.
I was a diehard Star Wars
Yeah.
fan, and they suck.
Well, it just with the trivia, sometimes you don't want to go too much. It's the same when I host the Simpsons trivia. I always narrow it down to the first 12 seasons.
Perfect.
The ones that everybody knows and loves and watches all the time.
Yeah.
And then same when I do Lord of the Rings. We're doing the movies, and I'm we're not doing the theatrical, or we're doing the theatrical versions, not the extended versions, because we also don't have time for that, and that just adds so much in. And then throw in the books, and it becomes too much. So you kind of have to narrow it down. So Star Wars, if we did it, would probably just be the movies. Not include any of the TV shows, even though The Mandalorian is so good. But
I love that. Yeah, that was
so
great.
good.
That was really good. Yeah.
And then, but yeah, we'll put it out there. See what people, because really, just episodes 4, 5, and 6, I can get 4 rounds of easily.
Oh yeah, they're the best.
With stuff so much still left over. So
I saw, and this is going to age me. I saw Star Wars. I saw Star Wars in the theater, 1977. My brother picked me up. My older brother picked me up in his brand new 1977 GMC Jimmy. He had an 8-track stereo installed in it, and he had Supertramp. I think it was Crime of the Century or Breakfast in America.
Yeah.
Just blasting on it. And I still remember that to this day, driving to the theater. And this was when we lived in Kingston, Ontario.
Yeah.
To the theater on Princess Street, the Odeon, to go see Star Wars. And I don't remember the movie at all, but I remember the end of it. At the end of it, there was a trailer for Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, there's another one. I was so jacked. I was just, oh man, it was awesome. It was so awesome.
Okay, so come down to Two Rivers, try some delicious cocktails, talk cocktails with Mark, talk Star Wars, talk music.
Yeah.
There's so much to do. Yeah, it's a great place, and you can bring your kids down too.
Yep. Kids are welcome until 8 p.m.
Yeah, kids are welcome till 8 p.m. So if you're looking for that Saturday afternoon, especially while we're still in this blah weather where it's not the nicest out, but you want to get out of the house and you want to get the kids out of the house, and you're like, but I need a drink.
Yeah.
Don't just go to Boston Pizza.
We got lots. Yeah, and we've got mac and cheese and stuff
Yeah.
for the kids too, so you can always throw some food down their gullet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
That's
we've got
perfect.
a milk crate full of kids' toys from my kids that
Yeah.
are here. So yeah, it's all good.
It's perfect.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Mark, for being here today on the podcast with me.
Appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. Check out Two Rivers. Instagram is Two Rivers Distillery.
Distilling.
Distilling, yes. Two Rivers Distilling.
But Facebook is Two Rivers Distillery.
Yeah.
So yeah, go figure.
I'll be taking all of it. You know
Yeah.
what's up. But yes, thank you so much, Mark. And thank you all for passing time with me this time. And we'll chat soon.